I am thrilled and really excited to announce and introduce Layne Pavey, who is going to lead our next session. I consider Layne a rock star, and I have really enjoyed getting to know her and to become her friend. She is a certified peer counselor and an MSW. She recently obtained that MSW from Eastern Washington University. She's a mental health clinician in private practice. She's on the executive committee of Smart Justice. She serves as a board member for Open Gate Reentry, Don't Shoot, and Spokane Can, which is the consumer advocacy network. She is the founder of I Did the Time, which is an advocacy group working to advance opportunities for people with arrest and conviction records after serving their time. And I believe today you're about to hear from some of them.
I'm just going to stand up here, and I'd welcome you guys to come stand up here if you want to as well, because I noticed I couldn't see some of you guys when I was sitting there. But we're so excited to be here today. Many of you know that America incarcerates more of its citizens than any other industrialized nation in the world. And when it comes to understanding what causes crime and what deters it, we are pretty much the worst. So we are a group of ex-offenders who are advocating for more opportunities. And our name is based on that old warning, don't do the crime if you can't do the time. Well, there's 70 million of us in America who have done the crime, we've taken responsibility for it, we've done the time, and we're ready to move on with our lives. We are huge supporters of Smart Justice because we've lived it. We want to share with you today what that experience was like for us. Oftentimes, the system doesn't understand that maybe it's just one person who helps us believe in ourselves, who helps us recognize that we're worthy of recovery and that we can live successfully in society, that creates that turnaround perspective for us. I was watching the debate between Brian Beggs and Larry Haskell a couple weeks back before the election, and I was so disheartened when Larry Haskell was asked about Smart Justice. He said something along the lines of, yeah, Smart Justice is great, but I'm not going to give a bunch of treatment to people who don't care about it and don't want it. And it was clear to me that he had not spent 2 minutes reading all of the research that shows evidence to the contrary about how to engage us. And first of all, you know, when we're going through a system where we're being jailed and we're going through a court process and we're being treated like the scum of the earth from everyone in authority who obviously has way more power over us than we have, we're a little confused when you turn around and offer to help us. So people say, okay, now it's time for treatment, and we're like, yeah, nah, no thanks. And then many of us who, in old school programs, did take the treatment were met with interventions that were guilt-based, that attempt to get us to understand that we should change because of how bad we are, which doesn't work. So if Haskell would read the research, he would see that when the counselors and the case managers in the jails are trained in the strengths and recovery perspectives, that just the subtle way that they interact with us inspires us to want to engage in treatment. He would see that there's things called peer counselors who are just doing a great job across the nation. And many of us here today are peer counselors, and we can't wait to get into county jails to help people here in Spokane. It's where you take an individual who's been through the system, who's been through some kind of drug and alcohol or mental health treatment, and you help them learn some counseling skills to be with that person, with the offender as they go through the system, helps them understand the court process, helps instill hope, helps let them know that there's the light at the end of the tunnel. There's also something called the trauma-informed perspective that counties across the nation, including King County, have trained their judges and their lawyers in so that they can learn to expect the presence of a trauma response in the courtroom and help diffuse that situation so the individual feels safe. There's a direct correlation between how we are treated at sentencing by our judge and how willing we are to engage in treatment. And aside from all of that, there's also research that shows that whether treatment is mandated or voluntary, that people actually get something out of it. So we're here to talk today about how destructive behaviors like drug use, prostitution, they aren't necessarily people's problems. They're people's solutions to their problems. And when we're able to get treatment that is competent, that assesses our own individual needs and figures out what's going on for us, we're able to find new solutions to our problems. For me personally, I made some bad decisions. I'm a first-time nonviolent offender, In 2008, I suffered some financial hardships. The ex-boyfriend I was living with at the time decided he was going to sell cocaine to get us out of debt. It was a hard thing to watch as I watched the man who I thought I was going to marry, who I wanted to have children with in the future, spiral off into the megalomaniac that is characterized as Walter White in Breaking Bad, if any of you have seen that show. And it was difficult to do, but I chose to leave him. But I left him in my house. And 6 months later, the DEA came back to get me, said, you can't sweep this under the rug. You officially are going to go to prison and serve time as a conspirator in a federal drug conspiracy. And everything was sort of awful at that point in time, but then it got worse. The DEA continued to threaten me with 40 years. I was going through interrogations and polygraphs. I had this attorney that would sort of just kind of let me walk in there and say, I'm not allowed to be with you at that point in time. But then when I'd get through closed doors, they'd ask me to sign away my rights to an attorney. And so I'd go out and ask my attorney what that was about, and then he would blame me, shame me, and sort of berate me like publicly in front of the court system. It was really interesting. But needless to say, I didn't handle this very well. The shame of what I had done, coupled with the fear of knowing I was going to prison, I started abusing alcohol and marijuana nearly every night, just wishing that I didn't wake up in the morning. And then the newspaper articles came out that publicly vilified me, and people got to talk about exactly what they thought on those online blogs, and everyone I knew got to read those. And I got to the point where I really started to buy into the hype, started wondering whether or not I really deserved to be here any longer, whether or not society would just be better off without me. I failed a drug test early. I went to jail earlier than I was supposed to, but it was the second night in the county jail that a social worker popped into my cell and said, "Are you okay? What happened to you?" And I was shocked because no one had bothered to ask my perspective through this whole entire process. So I was reticent to want to share. I later learned that this is part of the trauma-informed perspective when you ask the offender, what has happened to you versus what's wrong with you. You see the difference? It helps engage us. And so I shared. I said, you know, I've lost everything. Everybody hates me. I don't see a lot to live for anymore. And you know, I left my ex-boyfriend, and I don't feel like I got a lot of credit for that throughout this process. And he validated what I said. And I was also shocked. And he said, you know what, Layne? You don't have to define yourself by this. He said, you don't have to let these few years of your life define the rest of your life. And he said, the Chinese symbol for crisis is actually two symbols. It's danger plus opportunity. The Chinese inherently know that out of crisis comes this really great opportunity to learn and grow, and you're gonna come out of here smarter and stronger than you've ever been. And I bought it. Those few encouraging words from one social worker at the beginning of my time influenced the way I did the rest of my time. I happily engaged in all of my mandated treatment. I wanted to learn what was going on with me that would cause me to make those decisions, and more importantly, how I could make sure that I didn't get in a situation to make those decisions again. And it's because of that one man that I stand in front of you today wanting to give back. I went out and got the same master's degree that he had because I wanted to be the person who got to reach down, pull people out of the darkness, and point them towards the light. And the good news is that I get to do this professionally every day. I get to do that for the clients who I work with. And the reason that I do it is because I know that it works. Thank you.